Before we dive in, hit subscribe if you dare know what really hides behind closed doors, because some neighbors keep secrets darker than the night itself. For years, the small town of Brindlewood believed it was the safest corner of America, a sleepy place with trimmed hedges, weekend barbecues, and neighbors who wave at each other out of habit more than warmth. But that illusion shattered the morning officers were called to Willow Lane, a quiet cul-de-sac suddenly swarming with police cars, flashing lights, and whispers that never truly faded. The call came in at 5:42 a.m. A jogger had found a woman lying motionless behind the community center. No ID, no phone, just a torn sleeve, a thin trickle of blood, and eyes wide open as though she had seen something unbearable in her final moments. Detective Mara Ellison arrived before sunrise, her gloves already on, her instincts humming like live wires. She took one look at the body and knew this wasn't random. This was deliberate. The first clue was the way the woman's hands were arranged, palms flat, fingers straightened, almost ritualistic. The second was a faint smell of cleaning chemicals on her clothes, as if someone had tried to wipe her down, but rushed the job. But it was the third clue that froze Mara where she stood, a small silver necklace half tucked under the victim's collar, engraved with a single initial, L. By noon, the identity of the woman spread through Brindlewood like wildfire. Laura Myers, a beloved elementary school teacher, missing for less than 12 hours before the jogger found her. Her students adored her. Her colleagues respected her. Her neighbors described her as warm, funny, and generous. No known enemies. No troubling relationships. Just a good woman in the wrong place, unless she had been the target all along. Detective Mara didn't buy the idea of randomness for a second, so she started on Willow Lane, Laura's Street. Perfect lawns, white fences, SUVs washed every Sunday. A neighborhood built to look safe even when it wasn't. The first neighbor she spoke to was Harold Finch, a middle-aged accountant who lived next door to Laura. His opening words felt rehearsed. "I didn't hear anything last night." "Not a thing," he said, arms crossed, eyes strangely unfocused. She kept to herself mostly. But Mara noticed a fresh scratch on his right hand. Not deep, but recent, and the way he kept shifting his weight, as if uncomfortable being looked at for too long. "Mind if I ask how you got that?" she said casually. Harold chuckled stiffly. "Oh, this? My cat. He's wild sometimes." Yet the man didn't own a pet, not even a fish. Mara filed it away. Nearby, another neighbor hovered on her porch. Eleanor Ward, an elderly widow who claimed she couldn't sleep past 2 a.m. these days. She insisted she had seen nothing unusual, but her voice trembled, and she kept glancing across the street toward a house with its curtains drawn tight. "That one," she whispered finally, leaning closer. "Something's wrong in there. Always has been." The house she pointed to belonged to Daniel Reeves, the quiet neighbor who barely spoke to anyone, worked from home, lived alone, rarely stepped outside except to collect deliveries. People called him polite but odd, the type that blended into background so perfectly that no one questioned anything about him. Detective Mara walked toward the Reeves residence, noticing how silent it felt. No birds on the roof. No sounds from inside. Just stillness. The front yard was immaculate. Too immaculate, as if trimmed by someone with more time and precision than the average homeowner. She rang the bell once. Twice. No answer. But as she turned away, she caught sight of something half hidden by the porch steps. A smear of discoloration on the wood. Faint, nearly erased, but unmistakably blood. She snapped a photo before crouching to inspect it. The smear led slightly under the steps, vanishing into shadow. Before she could investigate further, a voice called from behind her. "Detective, you might want to see this." It was Officer Grant, waving her over. He had found something behind Laura's house. A trail of flattened grass leading toward the trees. Footprints. 2 sets. One smaller. One larger. The smaller set matched Laura's, shoe size. The other? Bigger. Heavier. And the stride length suggested someone strong enough to drag a resisting adult. Mara's pulse quickened. This was no simple abduction gone wrong. Whoever had taken Laura knew the terrain, knew the neighborhood, and had moved with confidence. Possibly someone who lived nearby. Possibly someone who had watched her for a long time. She followed the trail until it abruptly stopped behind Daniel Reeves's backyard fence. A fence that, on closer inspection, had a freshly replaced plank still lighter than the rest of the wood. Mara exchanged a look with Officer Grant. No words were needed. They circled back to the front of Reeves's house, prepared to knock harder this time. But just as Mara reached the door, a sound echoed faintly from inside. A thud, then another, not loud enough to be accidental, not soft enough to be ignored. Mara froze, listening. Something, or someone, was moving in that house. She signaled the officers. 3 deep breaths. Then she pushed the door slowly, silently. Unlocked. The living room was dim, curtains drawn, the air heavy with the smell of bleach. A single glass sat on the table next to a half-empty bottle of whiskey. Nothing else in sight at first, until Mara noticed a corner of a rug slightly lifted, as if moved recently. Her stomach tightened. But before she reached it, the noise came again directly below them, in the basement. The door to it was locked from the outside. Mara steadied herself, keys in hand, breath sharp in her throat. She looked at the officers, nodded once, and turned the key in the lock. The hinges moaned as the door opened, and what they saw in the darkness below changed everything. The beam of Detective Mara Ellison's flashlight sliced through the darkness, illuminating a narrow staircase descending into the unknown. The air grew colder with every step, thick with the unmistakable scent of damp cement and something metallic beneath it. Officer Grant followed close behind her, his hand hovering near his holster. No one spoke. Words felt too fragile for whatever waited below. Halfway down, the temperature dipped sharply, as if they had stepped into a different world entirely. When Mara reached the basement floor, her boot brushed against something soft. A tarp, large, folded twice and stained. She knelt, gloved fingers brushing the edge, lifting it just enough to reveal a streak of dried, rust-colored residue. Blood, fresh within the last 12 hours. Grant swallowed hard. "This is a kill room." "No," Mara murmured, scanning the space. "This is a staging area. Someone tried to make this look like cleanup, because around them, the basement wasn't chaotic. It was organized meticulously so. Shelves lined with labeled containers. A workbench with tools arranged in perfect symmetry. A camera tripod set up in the far corner. And on the back wall, pinned with neat precision, were photographs. Dozens of them, all of Laura Myers. Different days, different outfits, different seasons. Some taken from afar, some clearly taken through a window. A visual timeline of her life, without her knowledge. Mara stepped closer, her stomach twisting as she examined the earliest photo. It was dated 3 years earlier, meaning whoever had been watching Laura hadn't started recently. This was a long obsession, a quiet, calculated fixation. Her eyes landed on the most recent picture. It had been taken 2 nights ago. Laura, stepping out her car, bags of groceries in her arms. She looked relaxed, unaware of the lens hiding in the shadows inches from her. "That confirms it," Grant whispered. Reeves was stalking her. But Mara didn't answer. Something wasn't adding up. Reeves didn't fit the profile of a violent offender. At least, not yet. Obsessive, yes. But the crime scene upstairs and the body found at the community center suggested brutality, panic, and speed. This basement, however, was the opposite. Controlled. Clean. Intentional. She turned away from the photos and moved toward a metal cabinet secured with a heavy padlock. A faint vibration seemed to hum through it, as if something inside was shifting. Mara raised a finger to silence Grant, then pressed her ear against the cold steel. A sound drifted out, soft, ragged, breathing. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She gestured to Grant. Together they pried the lock open, metal screeching in protest. When the door swung wide, a small form tumbled forward, gagged, wrists zip-tied, trembling violently. Not Laura, a teenage girl, barely 16. She gasped when she saw them, eyes wide with terror. "Help me," she choked out when Mara removed the gag. Please," he said he'd come back. "Who?" Mara pressed. Daniel Reeves? But the girl shook her head with frantic urgency. No, it wasn't him. It was someone else. He works with him. He said I wasn't supposed to see his face. Grant stepped forward. Did this man hurt you? Did he hurt Laura? The girl broke into sobs. He said he hurt a woman last night. Said people would blame Daniel. Said he just needed a place to keep me until... She stopped abruptly, as if remembering something terrible. He's coming back for me. Mara felt the ground shift under her feet. Everything about the crime suddenly cracked open into something far more complex. Someone was using Reeves. Someone who knew his routines, his loneliness, his obsession with Laura. Someone who knew how to hide behind the perfect scapegoat. But one question gnawed at Mara. Where was Daniel Reeves now? She radioed dispatch. We need an immediate search for Daniel Reeves. Alive or dead. And we need an ambulance for a kidnapping victim. As Grant led the girl upstairs, Mara stayed behind, scanning the room again. This time not as a stalker's sanctuary, but as a crime scene manipulated by someone else. She traced her fingers along the workbench, noticing a faint set of fingerprints in the dust that didn't match Reeves's typical patterns. One hand was larger, wider, more forceful. A second intruder. She found muddy footprints leading toward a back door, one that opened into a narrow alley. Fresh prints, heading away from the house. He had been here recently. Maybe still nearby. Mara followed the prints outside. The alley was silent, but a faint buzzing sound drifted through the early morning air. She traced it to a utility pole. At the base, taped crudely to the wood, was a cheap burner phone vibrating with an incoming call. She picked it up. No caller ID. Mara answered cautiously. This is Detective Ellison. A low voice responded, calm and chilling. You weren't supposed to find her yet. Mara stiffened. Who is this? The man chuckled softly. You're too early. You're moving faster than the others. That's good. Makes this more interesting. Where's Daniel Reeves? She demanded. Another soft laugh. Daniel? He served his purpose. Curious man. Lonely man. Easy to steer. Mara's grip tightened. What do you want? Want? The voice echoed, amused. Detective, I'm already getting what I want. But since you're so eager... A faint click sounded, followed by a short recording. Laura's voice. Screaming. Muffled. Terrified. Mara's blood ran cold. The line cut. She stared at the dead phone. Heart pounding, dread rising like a tide. Whoever this man was, he was ahead of them, watching, calculating. And Laura Myers might still be alive. But just as Mara turned to rush back toward the house, she saw something taped behind a utility pole. A photo, freshly printed. Laura, bound, eyes swollen from crying. The timestamp in the corner read 1 hour ago. Mara's breath hitched. The killer wasn't running. He was leaving a trail meant just for her. If you think the secrets we've uncovered so far are shocking, hit that subscribe button and brace yourself. The truth behind a quiet neighbor is darker than you could imagine. Detective Mara Ellison sprinted back toward Reeves's house, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The photo taped a utility pole burned in her mind. Laura's terrified face, time-stamped only an hour earlier. Whoever was orchestrating this wasn't just methodical. They were daring, leaving breadcrumbs to taunt her, to challenge her. Inside the house, the girl she had rescued huddled under a blanket, still shaking. Grant knelt beside her, murmuring reassurances. Mara's focus, however, was fixed elsewhere. Daniel Reeves was missing. Whoever had used him as a pawn had struck again, and the window for saving Laura was shrinking with every passing second. She scanned the basement one last time. The shelves, the photos, the meticulously organized tools. It all spoke of obsession, but also planning. Whoever was behind this had control, patience, and a chilling intelligence. Then she noticed something she had missed before. A faint line of dust on the floor leading from the workbench to a small, narrow door in the corner. Unlike the basement's main door, this one had a simple latch, recently forced open. Mara didn't hesitate. She pulled it open. A crawl space, too small for an adult to move quickly, but it led toward the back of the house. Her gut twisted. It had to connect to an exit unseen from the street. She radioed Grant. Get a unit to secure the perimeter. Laura is likely being moved, and we can't afford to lose her. Grant nodded. Urgency etched into his features. Already done. Sirens are on the way. Mara squeezed into the crawl space, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Every inch felt like stepping deeper into the mind of a predator. She emerged into a narrow alley behind the house. The faint buzzing from the phone earlier still lingered in her mind. She had no time to think, only to act. The alley led to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Windows boarded up, paint peeling, chain link fences rattling in the cold wind. The perfect hideout. Mara moved silently, gun drawn, listening. Faint noises, a shuffle, a stifled cry. She pressed closer. Inside, the scene was worse than anything she had imagined. Laura was tied to a chair in the center of the room. Across from her, a man moved with calculated precision. The predator from the call, tall, broad, masked. Behind him, Daniel Reeves sat slumped, wrists tied, looking dazed, muttering incoherently. Mara stepped out from the shadows. Police dropped a weapon. Her voice echoed, firm, demanding. The man froze, then turned slowly. Detective Ellison, he said, voice eerily calm. You're just in time for the finale. Mara's pulse raced. Who are you? Why involve Reeves? The man laughed, a low, chilling sound. Daniel was perfect. Quiet, lonely, predictable, easy to manipulate. And you're sharp, but not sharp enough to see the pattern until now. He gestured toward Laura. The game is simple. Control the pieces, move them carefully, and watch chaos unfold. Reeves played his role. Laura, she was a pawn. And now you, detective, are part of the board. Mara assessed the room. The man held a remote in one hand. Multiple cameras positioned around the warehouse fed live footage to monitors. Every angle covered. She realized immediately. Any sudden move could trigger a mechanism designed to hurt Laura. Thinking fast, she spoke slowly, deliberately. You want attention, recognition, the world to know your cleverness. But it's over. Surrender, and no one else gets hurt. The man tilted his head. Clever. But I've already won the first part. The cameras captured everything. Evidence against me? Already compromised. By the time anyone intervenes. Well, let's just say chaos has its own schedule. Mara's mind raced. There had to be a flaw. Everyone left a flaw. She took a calculated step forward, keeping her voice calm. You're not untouchable. You're relying on fear, on hiding behind technology. But someone always slips. And you've underestimated me. The man's eyes flicked to a small vent near the floor. Just as he moved to activate something, Mara fired a single shot, a warning, precise, shattering one of the camera lenses. Sparks flew. In the sudden distraction, she lunged, knocking the remote from his hand. Chaos erupted. The man lunged at her, but Mara twisted, using his momentum against him. He stumbled into a table, hitting it hard enough to break glass and metal, momentarily stunned. Grant and backup poured into the rear entrance just as Mara freed Laura, carefully cutting the ropes. Laura fell into Mara's arms, trembling but alive. Thank you, she whispered, tears streaming. The man tried to flee, but was tackled by officers seconds later. Daniel Reeves, still dazed, watched silently, realization dawning. The predator had manipulated him for years, exploited his obsession, and nearly destroyed innocent lives. In the aftermath, it became clear. The man was a serial manipulator, meticulously planning crimes not for passion, but for control. He had studied his victims, planted distractions, and used others as shields. The quiet neighbor had been a pawn in a dangerous game, and Laura's survival was almost a cruel accident. Weeks later, after confessions, evidence cataloging, and court proceedings, the town of Brindlewood struggled to reconcile with the truth. Daniel Reeves cooperated, ultimately considered a victim in the manipulation, while Laura tried to return to normalcy. But normalcy no longer existed. Shadows of fear and suspicion lingered in every quiet street, every familiar face. Detective Mara Ellison stood outside the Reeves house one last time. The lawn was neat, curtains drawn, a silent monument to what had happened. Sometimes, the most dangerous predators are the ones who seem invisible, who blend into the quiet hum of daily life. And sometimes, the truth is far darker than anyone could imagine. Laura survived, but the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. And Daniel Reeves, the quiet neighbor everyone trusted, would never see the world the same way again. They thought the nightmare was over. But some secrets never truly die. They hide, waiting for someone curious enough to uncover them, just like Mara,